Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Barclays Center here in New York, where the Lakers fell 111 to 108 to drop to 40-23. They are now 0-2 on this 4-game road trip. They played tonight without LeBron James, Rui Hachimura, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Jaxson Hayes. That is their starting front court and their key front court reserve. However, it was still a really bad loss, arguably their worst loss of the season. I think it's at least in that conversation, just based on the context of how the game went, who they still had available, and the fact that this was a winnable game. This was a game on paper that, especially with the upcoming schedule, they kind of had to win based on they're about to play 3 consecutive back-to-backs in 8 days starting on Thursday. So really tough loss for the Lakers. We will get into all of it. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. And one more note, shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. As Didi says here, congrats on 25K. I just hit the 25K mark. I appreciate you all for hopefully subscribing, but even if not, watching and listening and liking and supporting. So finally hit the 25K mark on YouTube. Technically actually hit it last video and I forgot to mention it. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned it on tonight's show, and I'm glad that Didi brought it up. So thank you all so much for watching, listening, supporting, subscribing, following, all that stuff. I really appreciate it. And we just hit 25K at basically the 1 year mark. We're 1 week past the 1 year mark now, and looking forward to the next year and many years to go. So let's get into the game here. Overarching takeaway for me, as I mentioned at the top, is just this is a really costly loss for the Lakers. When I talked about, for those who have not checked it out yet, check out my Buha's block, my last episode, where I cover what LeBron's injury means for the Lakers. I look at 5 potential silver linings from the situation and 3 clear downsides to the situation. And when I was looking at this upcoming stretch of schedule that LeBron is projected to miss, I was tentatively penciling in the Brooklyn game as a game that the Lakers would win. And the fact that they lost this game and were in control early and had a shot late, and really it came down to lack of defensive execution. And really I felt like a lack of force and focus defensively. And you saw, like, when they saw the game was slipping out of their hands late, they got desperate. And that's when they started to play with a sense of urgency and a certain verve. But I just felt like this was one of those games where, certainly from a quality of opponent standpoint, one of the worst losses of the season. I think the Utah loss is up there. Obviously, the Charlotte loss is up there. But maybe Charlotte is a little worse than this one because it was a home game and LeBron played in that one. But like this one is up there. And even with them being shorthanded, undermanned, like, part of being a good team is figuring that out and just winning those types of games. And the Lakers have showed that. They entered this game 20-5 over their previous 25 games. They'd won a lot of those games without Luka, without AD, and without various players throughout that stretch. So, like, they have done a really good job of overcoming whatever obstacles kind of thrown their way. And tonight, against a team that, if I'm not mistaken, Brooklyn is, well, now that they've won one game, but they're 2-8 in their last 10 games, and they had lost. Yeah, they were on a 7-game losing streak. So the Lakers just had their 8-game win streak snapped, and the Nets had a 7-game losing streak. So that they just snapped against the Lakers. So, like, just an inexcusable loss from that perspective, and one loss that, like, could end up but when we look at the standings at the end of the season, like this could end up costing the Lakers, because looking at, I'll pull up the standings right now and share them with you for those watching on YouTube. But looking at this right here, so OKC's far and away ahead of everybody right now. But Denver just won tonight. They beat OKC. So now they are 2 games up on the Lakers in the win column, 1 game up on them overall. But they have a slightly easier schedule than the Lakers. Now Memphis won tonight. So they're actually tied with the Lakers for the 3 spot. They are 1 game behind them in the loss column, 1 game ahead of them in the win column. And then Houston has actually by far the easiest schedule of all these remaining teams in that top 5. And they are 2 games back in the loss column. And oh yeah, the Lakers have a nice back-to-back in Milwaukee and then in Denver to close out this road trip. So with no LeBron, no Rui, guaranteed for both of those games. Jaxson Hayes, I'm going to touch on some of the injury stuff a little bit later, but like Jackson's day-to-day, DFS's day-to-day. If they don't have those guys for Milwaukee or potentially Milwaukee and Denver, I mean, they're just kind of decimated there in the front line, and those are probably going to be losses. Even if they get those guys back, it'll still probably be losses with no LeBron, no Rui. But the Lakers are in a precarious situation here now, and especially with losing this game. This was just it's one thing if look, Brooklyn shot the ball pretty well overall, 18 of 45 on threes. They shot 40%. They took care of the ball. They only had 7 turnovers, which led to 4 Lakers points. I mean, they only shot 41% overall, but like, had Brooklyn had this like insane shooting performance, or just like one of those avalanche nights where they hit 22 threes and they shoot over 50%, and it's just like they're making everything, I think it's still the same result, but it's a little bit more understandable. But with the Lakers like controlling this game early, still basically being in the game the rest of the way, and then really not turning it on until like the last few minutes, it was just a little bit too late, and they let this one slip away. And I think that, again, when we look at them battling Denver, them battling Memphis, them battling Houston, them potentially battling Golden State. Golden State continues to win. Like that's just that's tough. So this could be like what, again, at the end of the season, when we look at it, this could be the difference between 3 and 4, 4 and 5, 5 and 6. Like any of those seeds could be determined by one game. And I think this could be one that comes back to haunt the Lakers in a really unfortunate way. Stat of the night to me, I just alluded to it, but I'm going to look at points off of turnovers. And I think that's the biggest one. Like fast break points and second chance points are also up there. But points off of turnovers, the Lakers had 15 turnovers leading to 19 Brooklyn points. And Brooklyn had 7 turnovers leading to 4 Lakers points. So a 15-point gap there in terms of points off turnovers, and an 8 turnover gap there in between the turnovers, between the two teams. So I think part of this was the personnel that was available for the Lakers. As I mentioned, they were without 4 of their top 5 front court players. Those guys have all been key defensively. LeBron has been arguably their best or most consistent defender for quite a while, or like the peak version of him on a nightly basis. Of course, DFS, we know he's come in and just amplified everything since the D'Lo trade. Rui has been a key defender in the starting group. Jaxson, is improved as a rim protector and a defensive rebounder. So missing all those guys, like there was just an element of the Lakers didn't quite have the requisite level of size and rim protection and all that stuff. But just I think the turnovers and the 50-50 balls and just kind of the in-between game, the margins, Brooklyn clearly won that tonight. They had 16 offensive rebounds. Lakers had 8. They out-rebounded the Lakers only by 4, but those 16 offensive rebounds to 8, like that was another key stat tonight. So it just felt like Brooklyn was a little bit quicker to the ball for most of the night, especially after the first quarter when they were down by 12. And for the Lakers, I think this was one of those games where, you had to have a requisite level of urgency. Just of course, factoring in the opponent, I can understand the human element of maybe taking your foot off the gas, but you needed this win, and you could have won this game. And I think that stings a bit. Takeaway number one is there's a lot of like alarming post-game quotes from this game. So JJ said he felt the team took a lot of shortcuts, and he called them out after the game and said, like, if you want to be a good team in this league, you want to win games, you got to do the hard stuff. You can't take shortcuts. And I thought that was appropriate. And I thought that you could tell from how this game went that there was an element of, I think on some level, the Lakers kind of felt like they could just show up and win this game, even shorthanded. And that clearly was not the case. Then you had JJ also calling it a low communication game and calling out their communication right after he called it out after the Boston loss. So pregame, we spoke with him and talked about the Boston game again. And he mentioned that being a low communication game as well. So this seems to be a trend with the Lakers in terms of more recently not being on the same page, not communicating as loudly, as frequently. And there being some things that have just been botched by a lot of miscommunication. You had Gabe afterwards say that it was an out of character loss for the group, and that he felt like he's not concerned because he feels like they bring it basically every night, but that he felt like tonight was one of the nights they did not bring it, and that was a bit concerning just based on who was out, that he felt like that should have been a driving force for them to bring it even more, and instead they kind of let up. Luka took accountability and said that in reference to JJ's comments about the communication, that's on Luka, and that as a leader on the team and as the guy often dictating the offense, bringing the ball up the floor, like he needed to do a better job telling guys where to go, helping run the offense, and I'll get to the offensive stuff in a second. But that was from the Luka side, and then Austin took accountability and also said that he felt he was awful tonight and that he's someone that needs to step up with LeBron out. He did not do that tonight in his estimation, and that he could be better. So I think there's a lot of accountability taking, which I will say is an improvement on last season. And I'm not going to rehash all the stuff from last season, but I think in general, there was not as much accountability to like specifics of what the group could have done better, what the coaching staff could have done better. And I don't just put that on the coaching staff. I put that on the players as well. So I feel like the Lakers have a better culture of accountability. Now, at the same time, JJ said pregame that he felt the group was too unorganized offensively against Boston in the second and third quarters. And I know Crane just was tweeting about it, and I know a lot of you are tracking, and it's become aware now to people in terms of the offensive organization. And certainly the Lakers could have done a much better job. And I want to save the offense for takeaway number two, but it's hard not to talk about it a little bit. And like, there are elements, I think for sure, of just some basic stuff from Brooklyn that really gave the Lakers problems and caused a lot of turnovers, caused those opportunities for Brooklyn to get out in transition, and really just flummoxed the Lakers in like a way that I don't think it should have flummoxed them. And it felt like a lot of guys weren't on the same page, particularly like defensively, even late, just some of the switching, some of the decision-making in terms of closing out on shooters, some of the rebounding and boxing out. Like it felt like either too many guys were shifting to the paint, and then they were leaving certain guys open that some of them, you probably live with those guys making shots. Some of them, I know they did not want taking shots. And then it also, but then at the same time, it felt like there were also possessions where not enough guys were back and gang rebounding. And then you saw a lot of offensive rebounds and putbacks for Brooklyn. So just an odd game for this group because, again, energy has not been an issue for them for most of this stretch. Like, being connected has not been an issue for them. If anything, those two things, in addition to like attention to detail and preparation and like being locked in, those have been driving forces for this run that they've been on of now winning 20 of 26, but previously 20 of 25 and having that 8-game win streak and having the 6-0 homestand. So like the Lakers have been pretty good about all this stuff. So I don't know if it was the shell shock of losing LeBron and just being so decimated without so many key rotation guys and especially the bigger guys, or just, taking Brooklyn lightly, or the game plan, or guys just, some of this was lineups that hadn't played together, players who hadn't played. Alex Len started. He played 13 minutes. I thought he looked better than he had in his first couple games, but I think especially defensively is really limited as a drop coverage big, and felt like what was basic. It felt like at times, and I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, maybe that this is just my eye, but felt like he was almost trying to not make mistakes. And there's an element of like, especially defensively, you have to, like, ultimately it's about stopping the ball handler and stopping the ball. And I felt like at times he was almost more preoccupied with like preventing the roller from getting the ball. And even in situations where he could have kind of done both, he was like, I'm basically not going to let my man score. I'm going to sell out and stay with him, even if it leads to a layup, a little open floater. Like, I know the Lakers want to encourage mid-range shots, but there's a difference between like a pull-up 16-footer and an easy running like 6-footer or 4-footer for like a guard. Like I think, and I don't know if part of that's just like, maybe that was game plan stuff, and maybe that was, I think part of it's like his reaction time and just kind of his lack of quickness. But I thought that Trey Jemison was better in that role, in that style of defense. And I think Christian Koloko has been much better in that role, in that style of defense. So I thought Len looked better, and I will give him, I thought his short roll passing tonight was excellent. And I don't use that word lightly. Like he had a couple of assists, and I thought what was just firing some lasers out of the short roll that we've like, I think that's been an element of the game that the Lakers have really encouraged with their big men and really developed them with. But I thought Alex Len, with the rebounding, had a couple of tip outs offensively, and didn't have a defensive rebound, which I think in 13 minutes, you're a 7-footer, like you got to at least have a couple of defensive rebounds. And again, just felt like some of the stuff he does out there is like almost trying to prevent being blamed, or kind of him specifically making a mistake, when I think it needs to be a little bit more about like, and I'm not putting this like, trust me, he's low on the totem pole in terms of like, if we're playing the blame game for tonight. But I thought it was a questionable decision to start him, and it went better than I expected, but still did not go well. And outside of that, like I just thought a lot of these lineups aren't going to play together longer term. They struggled to have like proper spacing and shooting, and that was partly just a personnel thing for them. Takeaway number 2, now let's get into the offensive end. Brooklyn laid out the non-LeBron offensive, or excuse me, defensive blueprint for opposing teams, which is just blitz and trap and double Luka, and blitz and trap and double Austin, and make the other guys have to make plays and make shots. And it partly worked tonight. I didn't even touch on the notable performers. It felt like not really the night to do it, but I will touch on some of them now, where like Gabe had 24 points, 8 of 12 shooting, 6 of 9 on threes. Dalton Connect, 19 points, 8 of 18 shooting, 3 of 9 threes. Off the bench, Jordan Goodwin, 17 points, 6 of 8 shooting, 5 of 6 on threes, a career high 5 threes made. So those guys all benefited from Brooklyn's defensive style of really selling out against Luka and Austin. And that also led to some big passing performances from those two guys, 10 assists for Austin, 12 assists for Luka. But ultimately, the Nets made that calculation, and they took that gamble defensively, and it won out. They held the Lakers to 108 points. As aforementioned, Lakers had 15 turnovers, 5 for Luka, 3 for Austin. And a lot of those turnovers were against doubles and trying to pass out of it, trying to hit the roller, trying to hit the safety valve, the nearest offensive player. And Lakers just had far too many turnovers in those instances. So I think if I'm if I'm the Bucks, if I'm the Nuggets, if I'm the Suns, if I'm the Spurs, those are the next few opponents they play. I'm watching that, and I'm saying like, okay, let's go try to make. And Jared Vanderbilt had he had how many assists did he have? He had a couple assists, and he had that nice one to Dalton cutting along the baseline. But like, let's go make Jared Vanderbilt be the ball handler, be the playmaker. Let's go make Trey Jemison do that. Let's make Gabe and Dalton and Jordan take semi-contested shots. We'll rotate out over to that. So like, I thought they made a calculated gamble and it worked. And I think that is going to be the way that teams attack the Lakers moving forward. And I think there's several counters to this. Like, I think they need to have that player. Like you see it with LeBron, where sometimes when teams double Luka, LeBron will come up a bit higher, and you want that guy to be a competent ball handler, playmaker, decision maker. So that's where I think you could use Austin in that role. Now, when Austin's out, I ideally use Gabe. You could go down the pecking order, use Shake or use Jordan Goodwin in that role, but you need that safety valve of like, ideally you're getting something going downhill and finding a cutter or a roller. But if you can't, and because they really compacted the paint. It was like double Luka, then compact the paint and make the shooters beat us. And the Lakers actually shot the ball well, 19 of 40, 47.5% on threes. So it wasn't the shooting tonight, but I thought it led to a lot of jumpers, only 19 free throws for the Lakers, which is actually higher than I expected because they only shot 2 in the first half. And this was another element of the game that I probably should have touched on in the first takeaway, but I'll touch on now. Like, the Lakers really got frustrated tonight. I think Luka, especially with the lack of free throws. Again, 2 free throw attempts in the first half, 15 for the Nets in the first half. Ultimately, Lakers got 17 in the second half. The Nets end up taking 15 in the second half. So much more balanced in the second half. But Luka picked up a tech. There's a lot of drives, not getting calls, and then throwing his arms up at the refs, or a few times he fell on the ground and was not able to get back in transition in a timely manner. So I think his temper got the best of him a little bit tonight with the tech and with some of the complaining. At the same time, this is the third time in a row I've talked about officiating. It was the Knicks game, it was the Celtics game, it was the Nets game now. I do feel like this is the third straight game that the Lakers kind of got the short end of the stick with the whistle. At the same time, I think more often than not, the Lakers do get the benefit of the doubt, and part of that's a playing style thing. But like, I don't think there are many nights this season where you could really complain about the reffing or what happened with the Lakers and the free throws. Tonight is one of those nights, though. I do think, especially with Luka, he was getting clobbered. And it wasn't just like his drives, it was like his rebounds and them slapping at the ball. And like, it did feel like Brooklyn was able to be physical with him to a certain level that when the Lakers reciprocated that level of physicality, it resulted in free throws or fouls against them. So another kind of weird night from an officiating perspective. I know plenty of guys didn't want to touch that topic post game, but you could tell, especially with Luka, that he was pretty upset about it. But in terms of the offense, like the Lakers really have to, like, this is simple stuff, and Luka always gets 2 to the ball, but they just did such a poor job. And I do think part of it was missing LeBron, missing Rui, missing DFS. You're missing some shot creators, some cutters, some just extra guys who have played together, just high basketball IQ. And it felt like going from those guys to an Alex Len, or even a Shake Milton, a Trey Jemison, even a Dalton, like it's just a downgrade, right? So it's no shade at any of those guys. It's just like they're obviously not the same level of ball handler, playmaker, decision maker, cutter as like some of those other guys, including of course LeBron. So but the offensive end to me is where they really lost it. Like defensively, the rebounding, what was the problem, but I feel like that they're at some point when you lose 4 front court players, that like you can only out effort your opponent so much for rebounding. I do think at some point size and strength and athleticism come into play. And I do think Brooklyn was just a bigger, more athletic team tonight. At the same time, they're also the hungrier team. So I think that's another factor here where like, I don't want to absolve the Lakers of any blame defensively, or like a lot of miscommunications, a lot of misrotating, a lot of botched assignments, and then also the defensive rebounding. But I feel like the more controllable thing to an extent, and the bigger concern for me from this game was the offensive end, and just like I thought Austin was certainly better tonight. And after having I think two assists his first couple games back, he had 10 tonight, so much better from a playmaking perspective. Luka had a triple-double, 22, 12, and 12. It's really hard to nitpick that, but 8 of 26 shooting, 5 turnovers. I thought the physicality and him not getting calls really bothered him. With Austin, 3 of 14 shooting, 1 of 5 on threes. Kind of saved his night at the free throw line, going 10 for 11. But I think both of those guys have to be better moving forward for the Lakers to have any chance at beating a Milwaukee or a Denver or even a Phoenix and San Antonio. Like, they're going to need better performances. But I also think there's a limitation right now, which is the available personnel. And like, they're kind of picking between offensive and defensive guys. And I thought you saw them kind of struggle on either end, depending on who was in there. And then third and final takeaway, this one will be quick before we get into the Q&A. Just the injury updates. So JJ said there is no official timetable yet for LeBron, that they are still evaluating him, and that he doesn't yet know if it's a grade 1 or grade 2 or how long he's going to be out. So obviously I reported and confirmed the ESPN report that it's going to likely be 1 to 2 weeks, probably a bit closer to 2, but they still have to do some more testing and evaluating on LeBron. So that's the latest with him. Rui will be reevaluated at the end of the week, and then DFS and Jaxson are both day-to-day. So with DFS, JJ did clarify that it wasn't a new injury. It's that left ankle soreness that he had actually dating back to Brooklyn, and they've continued. It's the reason he missed the Charlotte game coming out of, or not the Charlotte game, the Utah game right before the break. Him and Gabe missed those games to tend to injuries or injury management. And with DFS, it's the same ankle he's been dealing with. And then Jackson's day to day. So I guess based on Jaxson being questionable and then being downgraded, that would maybe suggest he has a decent chance to play on Thursday in Milwaukee. It is nice for the Lakers that they have a 2-day break here for those guys to rest and recover. I also would assume, based on the way JJ talked about DFS's injury, that he's probably back by by Thursday. So we'll see with that. It's not great that they have 3 consecutive back-to-backs. I think Luka is clearly banged up with the back, and that is something that he had aggravated before the Knicks game, then aggravated again in the next game, and then was hobbled in Boston. I thought looked hobbled at times tonight, and that's something that he's going to have to manage moving forward. So Lakers are banged up at like a really bad time, but I think that this could also uncover some truths about this team and some lessons, and some things that they can clearly improve on. So we'll see, but definitely a bad loss that there's really no other way to, I think, like analyze or justify it. It was a bad loss, and it could be a costly loss. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. See, we got a first one from Mohammed. Thank you for the super chat. NYC fan link up. So I am going to be here tomorrow and Wednesday until I think my flight's at 6 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. So I did talk to a couple of people at the game. I met up with someone, and so that is definitely at games. I think that's kind of the easiest time for me to meet up with people. But if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the chat here. If you're in the New York area and you want to meet up, let me know. But otherwise, I mean, maybe I could do, maybe I'll do a post and then see if people want to meet up. But tomorrow I'm podcasting, then playing basketball later, actually, and then going out with my brother. So might have a window at some point in the afternoon, or maybe more realistically Wednesday. Mitch Potter, thank you for the super chat. 31 of 42, 74% of Lakers rebounds were from guards. I like you breaking it down that way. One caveat I would throw out is like Luka obviously is forward sized and plays more forward defensively. Like he's an off. It's kind of like what LeBron was for years, where like offensively he was like the point guard / primary ball handler. I mean, even at points this season, but then defensively he plays forward, similar with Luka. So Luka's kind of like in between. I guess I would consider him more of a wing than a guard, but he technically starts at point guard, is listed at guard. It was funny tonight that they listed Gabe Vincent at small forward, which I kind of found like with this lineup. That was another thing, that this interesting starting lineup: Alex Len, Dalton Connect, Gabe Vincent, Austin Reaves, Luka. I would have started Trey Jemison and played Christian Koloko and not played Alex Len. I don't know why Christian Koloko is so buried down the depth chart, and he was available for this game. So the thing with two-way guys that I don't know if everyone knows this, but if you're active for a game, it counts as a game played. And Koloko might have been a couple games ago, but he had 14 games remaining. So like this was a wasted game for Koloko in terms of him being available and just not playing. But yeah, interesting starting lineup tonight. Basically 3 guards, Luka and a big. And yeah, it did not really work. So, but I think that speaks to like Gabe. Gabe actually didn't have a rebound, but Jordan Goodwin had 8. Like Jordan Goodwin's just a dog. Austin had 8. Yeah, I mean they need more from the bigs. Done it. What up, man? Jovan, it was good to chop it up with you today. These past few games, especially this one, show how important everyone is with the I don't know what I would squiggly eye emoji. Yes, it was good to chop it up with you, and I'll hit you up tomorrow about going to the store. I'll keep that vague otherwise, but I appreciate it and appreciate meeting you at halftime. Honcho, Yo-Yo, LFG, 25K. Thank you. I appreciate that. Listen at work every day. Embarrassing loss, W analysis tonight. Do you have any positive takeaway from the last 2 L's? Safe travels. Yeah, I could come up with positive stuff. I think with the Boston game, I think if healthy, and that would, again, I think even if throw in Porzingis, like I think with Jaxson and Rui, I don't think the Lakers go down 20. I think it's a much closer game, and I'm not saying the Lakers would have won, but I think that would have been a competitive 40 minutes, and the Lakers don't have the lulls of the second and third quarter, and I think that I think it's a more competitive game from their end. So I don't think they're that far away from competing with a Boston or an OKC or a Cleveland. I mean, I've continued to say I view them as the 4th best team in the league when healthy, but I don't think they're that far off from really having a shot against those teams, if not already having a shot against those teams. But I think part of it's just more reps, more experience together. Like I don't think you can fast track that. And that's what the unfortunate part of the LeBron injury. But I think they are right there with some fine tuning offensively and having more of that size defensively with Rui and Jaxson back. Like if those guys were out for the season, it would be a different story, but like they're going to be back at some point relatively soon. And then from this game, I mean, I think that the shot making from some of the guys, like Gabe had been a guy who outside of the New York game had been struggling offensively. So maybe this is a game that gets him going. Dalton had been playing better, but like just another game. I mean, he was second in the team in minutes and led the group in plus minus. And I think another positive experience for Dalton, just continues to build his confidence. And Jordan Goodwin, like the thing with Jordan Goodwin, and I talked about it in my episode of Buha's block, breaking down the 10 biggest storylines of the 10 past 10 games, excuse me. Like the one thing with Goodwin is he has not been a good shooter in his NBA career. It's been one of the few things that holds him back, because nowadays to be a sub like 6'9" guy, 6'10" guy, you almost have to be able to be a shooter unless you are like absolutely elite defensively. And I think he's good defensively, but he's not like a Vando defensively. And he's also on the smaller side at closer to like 6'4" or so. but he obviously brings all the intangibles, the rebounding, the cutting, the can do multiple things offensively, is a good defender. But the last piece for Jordan Goodwin has been the shooting. And he talked about it tonight. He is constantly working on his shooting. He knows that's like the thing holding him back right now from being like a full-time NBA player. So for him to have a night where he hits 5 or 6 threes, with a lot of those coming from Austin and Luka spraying out to the corner, like I think this was a confidence boost for Jordan Goodwin. So I think more so the individual performances, I take away like Gabe Dalton and Jordan Goodwin positives. I think Austin getting his passing back, and like he still does not have his shot yet, but he did look more like Austin for stretches of this game. And Luka, I mean, it's funny to like nitpick a 22, 12, and 12 triple double, but I think just Luka being out there continues to like get more reps with his teammates and understand them. And I think you're starting to see, like, I thought he had that lob to Trey Jemison, which like, I think before he had thrown it too high, thinking Trey was more athletic, that like, multiple games ago, thinking Trey was more athletic than he was. And like now already like Luka has that supercomputer mind where you see he throws it in a little lower and Trey lays it in and doesn't actually dunk it. So I think with him just getting more reps with the guys is a positive. So I hope those were some positives for you. Stephanopoulos, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, I think this team has shown it's legit. Whether the next 2 weeks and rest up some guys, finish top 4 or 6th at worst, and we're good. Len is garbage can emoji. Yeah, I mean, I think he's their 4th best center, and that's not even factoring in like if we want to throw in LeBron or Rui or DFS or Vando. So like if you want to throw in the smaller guys, he's probably their 8th or 9th best center. So I think that the obvious move here for the Lakers is to waive Cam Reddish and Alex Len and just convert Jemison and Goodwin. I would personally like to see Koloko get another shot, another couple shots, and really have more of a competition between Koloko and Jemison, but it seems like they've decided their winner already. I agree with you. I think this team is legit, and not like the only thing that might knock them down a perch or not a perch. A perch is probably too incorrect word. The only thing that might knock them down a little bit for me in terms of like how I rank them in contention would be like, I do think it's trending toward Denver probably being the 2 seed. And if Denver's the 2 seed and the Lakers are the 5 seed, I don't think there's that big enough of a gap between the two teams where like I think Denver has an easier path to getting to conference finals and potentially finals in that case than the Lakers do, just by virtue of having home court against anybody else that's not OKC, having home court in the first 2 rounds. And maybe the Lakers knock off OKC, but then all of a sudden now they got to go to Denver, and like that's a pretty tough back-to-back to play both of those on the road, like back-to-back series. So if Denver's we'll see where LA ends up. I'm not going to knock them off now by any means, but like I think the one thing that maybe would push for me Denver to 4, LA to 5 would just be the seeding. And I do think there's a material difference between being like 5 or 6 versus being 2 or 3. I just do. Now, ideally you finish top 4, so you at least have home court in round 1. And I think that the goal now should more realistically be the 3 seed. I think the 2 seed, unless they could beat Denver in one of these 2 games, and I'm not ruling it out, but like realistically, I think they're probably going to lose both, and that would almost certainly lock up Denver. They'd have the tiebreaker. They'd be a couple losses ahead of the Lakers, at least theoretically. So we'll see what happens with that. But top 4, I would say 5th at worst. Like I think they'd really have to slide to drop to 6, but top 4, if not top 3, like I think they're in a good spot. But any lower, I do get a little concerned. I'm not going to lie. Tai, thank you for the super chat. What is Luka like off the court? He seems too chill and quiet to be the culture problem. The Mavs make him sound like. How has he responded to Braun? I think he's responded to Braun well. I think that, that there's a certain level of deference and respect. And So I think that is a good relationship. Obviously, LeBron was someone he grew up idolizing and wanting to emulate. In terms of off the court, we haven't had a lot of. I wouldn't say he's like the chattiest guy in the locker room or the chattiest guy with us compared to some of the other guys. But to your point, like I don't think he's some locker room malcontent or problem or whatever. Like he's just kind of chilled in the corner on his phone, icing. It kind of keeps himself a bit. There's certain guys that he's close with, Keith and DFS and Greg St. Jean, and like that. There are. I mean, it's not like he doesn't talk to people or ignores people, but I think he is a little bit more to himself. But he'll engage in some banter, and I think in general, like I think he almost has like a more European perspective on the media, which makes sense because he is European and played in the Spanish league for so long before coming over. But like I think for them, I don't think they love the media. So no one has had any negative interactions with him. No one has really asked him any negative questions either to kind of upset him or anything. So I wouldn't say like, I would say that the relationship is fine and building. For me, I would like to connect with him more on like the Serbian stuff and just the Balkan boys and that storyline, right? That was something I wrote about in the bubble, and would like to talk to him about, but haven't really had the right moment yet. But I'm trying to look for that moment and doing some other stuff behind the scenes to kind of make that happen. So, but I would say off the court, he's pretty, to your point, like chill and quiet. And I've yet to see any red flags with him in the locker room. Mint Millions, thank you for the super chat. They are cooked. Now have to play both Denver and OKC away. I would caution that I don't want to overreact to this loss in terms of like that they can't be the 3 seed or even can't be the 2 seed. Like there's still a lot of basketball left to play. They still got 19 games left, but to offset this loss, they probably have to go into Milwaukee or Denver and beat one of those teams, or like sweep that homestand or go, as they got 5 games at home, go at least 4-1 in that homestand. And if they can do that, I think that they're back in a better place. But if they lose to Milwaukee and Denver, and even if they beat like Phoenix and San Antonio and then maybe split that, like I just think it's they're getting in a tricky place. And not only are they having to worry about Denver, but you got to worry about Memphis and Houston now too. So I think cooked, it's premature to say they're cooked. And even if they are the 5 or 6 seed, I don't think they're necessarily cooked. I think they're certainly capable of winning a series on the road, and I would still pick them to win the first round series, whoever they're matched up with. But I do think it makes the playoff path tougher, and there's a reason why teams typically don't go on runs outside of the top 3 or sometimes top 4 in a conference. So I still think the goal should be trying to get the best seed possible and have home court for as long as possible. But this loss is certainly costly. I'm not going to deny that. But I wouldn't say they're cooked yet. BLC, thank you for the super chat. If we finish 5th and everyone healthy, good story to win the title. That's certainly possible. Again, I think 3 and 4 are better. So, but if it's 5th, then it's 5th, and then it's beat whoever, beat probably Memphis or Houston in round 1, and then go to OKC, beat them, go to Denver, beat them, and then play Boston or Cleveland in the finals. So I don't know if I know the 95 Rockets were the 6th seed, and Miami a couple years ago got to the finals as the 8th seed. It's tough to win 4 series in a row on the road. I will say that. That's where I think even if they can get the 4 seed and at least have 1 series at home, I do think that makes a difference. I do think it makes the path easier. You could do the 3 seed, like maybe you get lucky and the 2 seed loses, and then you have home court for another round. But regardless, I think to your point here, the biggest thing is going to be health. The Lakers, I think it's one thing to do it in the regular season. It's another thing to do it in the playoffs in terms of withstanding injuries. And of course, doing it in the regular season can help, but like they're going to need LeBron to have a shot, right? Like they're going to need Luka as healthy as possible. They're going to need Rui. They're going to need DFS. They're going to need Jaxson. So getting those guys healthy and keeping the rest of the guys healthy is going to be, I think, the biggest key here down the stretch. Britain, yeah, please like everyone. Yes, please. Let's get those likes up. I actually can't see them through StreamYard, which is what I stream with. But yeah, let's get those likes up. And yeah, Kurt Affair says over 500 watching, not even 100 likes. Come on, man, hit that like button. It's free 99. Yeah, let's get that engagement score up. I appreciate you guys. Reggie Live says Luka can't lead this team without Braun. I swear, I don't care what you say. I mean, this was the first time we've seen it, and obviously did not go well. I would like to think that Luka is enough of a competitor and special enough and talented enough and proficient enough to surprise us. So I would like to see how Milwaukee and Denver go, and even then, like I want to see more of a sample size, basically, before. And you're obviously free to say whatever you want and think whatever you want. I would like to see a little bit more, because this is the first time, and I talked about it in my last episode, but like the Luka on, LeBron off numbers have actually been pretty good. And even tonight, what's interesting is looking at it. Luka played 41 minutes and 18 seconds. The Lakers were +3 in his minutes, which means the other 6 minutes and 42 seconds, they were outscored by 6 points. So not a big margin in either direction, but technically, like, they won the Luka minutes, they lost the non-Luka minutes. And I think, especially without Rui and Jaxson and DFS, like that's where they're really going to feel it. Is there were just some times where they kind of had lineups or guys out there that probably shouldn't be out there together. Mitch Potter, thank you for the super chat. Everyone give thanks to Mama Norma. Yes, shout out to my lovely mother in the chat right now, Norma Maldonado there. And Michael D, congrats on 25K, insane growth, awesome community. I appreciate that. And I'm nothing without you guys. So I appreciate you all tuning in, supporting, and subscribing. And we do have an awesome community. I know it's rough right now. I know it's rough in these late night gang streets, but I think it's going to get better. Kevin Cambridge says, shout out to Mama Norma. Kevin Cambridge, do you think Austin is low-key not ready to come back yet? I wouldn't go that far, but I do think he has not looked quite himself. And I also think that Austin is a guy that is typically playing through like 1 or 2 injuries. Like, he is always banged up and just kind of plays through it. So again, I go back to like the early Luka days. Remember like how Luka looked the first few games, and it was like there was a lot of the sky's falling, a lot of panic, and it was like, okay, just give this guy a little bit of time here. I think Austin, if he doesn't have a big game by like his standards in one of the Milwaukee Denver games, then I think it's a little bit more concerning. But I thought he played better tonight than he did in the Boston game or the New York game. So like from that perspective, I think there was progress, but obviously 3 for 14 shooting, 3 turnovers. Like I thought he made up for it in other ways with the rebounding and the passing. But I think he probably came back maybe a little too early, but also based on who's out and like what the Lakers need right now, take away Austin and like it gets even more bleak. Like now, I mean, you're playing like Goodwin more, you're playing Shake more, you're maybe dusting off Cam Reddish. Like it gets much worse if you take Austin out, even with him not being 100%. Connor Phillips coming back from lower body injuries takes a while to get your rhythm back. Yeah, I think we've seen that with Luka and Austin. L.A. Jovan, can you ask JJ why Koloko has fallen out of favor, or will he lose his shot? I think more the latter. He's been interesting lately because I think some of the like he was asked about Cam Reddish tonight and if he would play him, and he shot that down. Like there's been some stuff I feel like with defending some of his decision making that he's been a little defensive with lately. So I would say if there's nothing more relevant to ask, I will ask that next game. FJ Bitophile, thank you for the super chat. My bad for hoping LA still has something to fight for April 6th when I take my boys to OKC, when OKC will not on 4 and 6, $700 for 3 nosebleed seats, I think they will have something to fight for. I don't think they will have their seed yet or their playoff matchup set. The one thing would just be potentially OKC not having something to play for because they're so far ahead in terms of the West. I wonder if maybe it's typically in these situations, I feel like it's typically the first game that they take more seriously. And then the second game is the one maybe where they rest people. So I would maybe factor that into your decision. But I would be surprised if the Lakers, again, they are tied with Denver in the loss column, 1 game ahead of Memphis in the loss column, 2 games ahead of Houston in the loss column, 5 games ahead of Golden State in the loss column. So it's like if they continue to tread water or even win, they're going to be in the mix with some of those teams. If they fall off the rails, they're going to be right there with Golden State and Minnesota. So it's like either direction, I think that they're not going to have their seeding settled by April 6th. So I think you're in the clear for that. My one fear would be OKC potentially resting their guys, and then you probably see a Lakers win, which is nice, but that would be my only thing to monitor to monitor. Tommy Gold, Cam and Koloko are in the doghouse. The interesting thing with this is I agree with you. However, with Cam, it was like clear he had that 1-for-7 game against San Antonio, and he basically has not played ever since outside of garbage time. And it was like he was missing layups, he was missing open threes. Like he had already started to be falling out of favor with the coaching staff and JJ, but the Cam one, there's like a clear, he got a shot. He had a really bad performance. I think it had already been trending toward him being out of the rotation, and that was like the last straw. So I can explain that one. The Koloko one, I mean, I guess you could argue he hasn't been as good lately in the games he's played in, but I don't think he had some terrible performance or some regression as a player. So the Koloko one, it felt like he was playing fairly well. They got to a point where they're kind of like, oh, well, they had Jemison, and they're like, well, we got to be careful with his game. That was kind of the early rhetoric out of with JJ. It was like, oh, we got to be careful with Koloko's games, and we got to be really mindful of it, and that made sense. But we've gotten to the point now where it's just like that's almost become, in my opinion, an excuse. And he's been available for games, and they just don't play him. And I don't. While I think Jemison has played well and filled a void, I don't think there's some giant gap between those two guys. I think they're relatively close. Now, obviously, from a skill set perspective, Jemison might just fill more of that physical, forceful player archetype that I think they were looking for with the Alex Len signing. So I guess if you look at him as more of the Alex Len replacement or upgrade or whatever, that makes some sense. But I think Koloko is the better rim protector and better overall defender. So I mean, he doesn't fit maybe that. He doesn't have the same frame as Jemison, but I guess I don't really get I don't see a clear reason for Koloko potentially being in the doghouse. Jay says, never going to regret going to a game with your boys. I think that's a great perspective and truth. Now you have to factor in money, right? And $700 for 3 tickets is a lot, but I think it would be a great memory. Mr. Palp Gaming, is Cam getting waived or is Len getting cut for Goodwin and Jemison? Well, they'd have to cut 2 guys to add 2 guys, but my expectation as of now would be Cam getting waived for Goodwin almost certainly, and then Len, that one's probably going to be more of a game time decision, but I would also ultimately expect that to happen as well. Connor Phillips, is JJ chill to talk to when you don't have him on the record? Yeah, JJ is very nice. I would say he's so on the record, I think he gives great answers. And like, obviously there's times he's upset, especially after losses where he gets a little testy and snipey. But in general, I think he's one of the best answer givers, interviewees in the league. And that should be no surprise based on him having the podcast and the media career. But I think off the record, he's been very, like, I would say, because now I covered Doc Rivers, I covered Frank Vogel, I covered Darvin Ham, and I covered JJ. I would say among those 4, JJ kind of shoots the shit the least with us compared to the other 3. Vogel was a little weird because part of that was during COVID too, but like I still think what was a little bit more like that. Darvin and Doc as well. So I would say JJ is very punctual and very, like, he's never late basically to a press conference. There's been a couple times off the top of my head, but he's very much just like on a mission at the games. So I think he's typically like, if it's a game, and he will occasionally do like a walk and talk, chat. So I'm not saying he never does those, but he's very much on a mission where pregame it's like do media and then zip it back to the locker room. Postgame it's do media, zip it to the back area, and then practices it's zip it back to like wherever he's hanging out along the sideline on the practice court. So I would say he's very intentional with his time in a way that I don't think like most coaches would kind of just shoot the breeze with you pre-post a little bit more. But I would say he's very nice, and he also makes up for it, I think, by just giving great answers, especially when you ask him X's and O stuff. I think he obviously is well equipped to answer that. Instant Sism, any Braun updates? Not really, just that I think it is going to be closer to the 2 weeks, probably on the shorter side, and they still haven't done the MRI follow-up. Jay, will Jovan post the Taco Bell QR code at the end? I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Scar, we waived Wood for an even worse center. I think it ends up being okay if they end up getting Jemison for Len, but yeah. Throwing to lies, how do we get Luka not to complain about fouls so much? I feel like it's a weakness in his game. I do think it's a weakness in his game. Like, I just think it's kind of baked in. Like, I mean, I would also say LeBron and AD also played. Maybe not, I don't think quite to the same level that Luka does, but I think with all 3 guys, there's been possessions where they complain, they don't get a call, and they don't get back in transition. And I think that's something that can be worked on. With Luka, I think part of it is like JJ's talked about it with Austin, where with Austin, there's a certain like daredevil nature to his game. And that's where you see some of the turnovers and just some of the chances that Austin takes. I think it's a similar thing with Luka, where Luka is fueled by passion. And when Luka is playing his best, he is cursing and trash talking, and he's getting into it with the refs. He's getting into it with fans. He's getting into it with the opponent. And that just like fuels him. So I do think like he has an emotional, passionate game. And if you tell him to tone it down, I think that there could be some unintended consequences in a negative way to that. Now, I think in general, some of the complaining could certainly be toned down. I'm not going to absolve him of like any responsibility or accountability in terms of that. But I do think it is partly baked into just like his personality, how expressive he is on the floor, and just how he plays. So I don't like, I mean, Dallas had him for 7 years, and I don't even think this was on their list of things they were throwing him under the bus for. But I just kind of think it is who he is. But I think it could be better, especially with the like not getting back. It's like complain while you're running back, and don't don't just stand there or whatever. King Carter, is there politics behind why Alex Len won't get waived? I think it's twofold. I'll say 3 reasons. One, I do think there's an element of the Lakers just don't want to admit they made the mistake yet. And I think tonight was just further confirmation that they did make a mistake. 2, I don't think there's a better alternative right now. And just the reason I say that is because they can still play Trey Jemison. They can still play Christian Koloko. So I think if they were up against it with those guys in terms of the games, maybe they would just cut Len. But right now, if there was like this great option in free agency, I think they would go for that. But I think for now, they're just kind of riding that out. And then 3, I think the thing is like they're just going to waive him at the end of the season. That would be when that happens. Mr. TD, do you think Luka should sit, or does he look good enough? I think he's good enough. I think if he could play, he should play. But within reason. BLC, becoming a habit to watch your stream, Jovan. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the super chat. FG, Bitophile, JJ shoots from the hip. He does. He is a straight shooter. He does not mince words in either direction. Fahim, thank you for the super chat. With 19 games left, what's your win-loss prediction without Braun and Rui for at least one more week? I can't see them going over 500 the rest of the way. The Bucks, Nuggets back-to-backs likely 0-4. Lots of dudes hobbled. I think that, like, to your point, like if we just knew LeBron was out, I think that would make it a little bit easier to predict. But no LeBron plus no Rui plus, sorry, I got a text that I had to check. No LeBron plus no Rui plus unclear statuses for Jaxson and DFS. It's like, that's tough to predict. Quickly, if I had to guess, I will say, I'll try to do this quickly. I would say they go. I'm gonna feel bold and say 11-8, and I know that might be a little bit high. So I guess what that would take them to 51-31. I think. I guess that I would also I would kind of insert the caveat that this is assuming LeBron is back, like either by that weekend game where they play Chicago at home or at some point earlier in that road trip. If he's out beyond that, then I would probably drop that by like another game or two. But I think if healthy, I probably would have picked them to go like 14-5 because I do think with some of these back-to-backs and like they are playing some tough teams, including tough games on the road. Like I would say like probably 14-5 would have been my prediction. I'm going to knock off, I guess, 3 wins, but I mean, honestly, the Nets game like kind of swing. I mean, I'm not factoring that in obviously into this record. So that game's in the past, but like that should have been really, if we're saying 11-8, should have been 12-8. But will end up being 11-9. So I'll say 11-8 because I also think when LeBron returns, there will be a certain level of urgency with this group. If there's a setback with Rui, I also would amend this. But assuming that if Jaxson and DFS can come back, for Thursday against Milwaukee. I think they have a legit chance, at least in that game. I think they do probably lose to Denver, second night of a back-to-back. Denver's really going to be amped for that game. I think they could beat Phoenix and San Antonio. Denver, Milwaukee, I think you just have to hope to split one of those. Should beat Chicago. At Orlando, Indiana, Chicago, Memphis. I think they probably lose to Indiana and Memphis, and then can you steal Orlando and Chicago? Then home, Houston, Golden State. You probably split that. If not, potentially win both, especially if LeBron's back. Home, New Orleans, you should win that. At OKC should be tough, but if OKC's resting their guys, potentially, maybe you just win both. At Dallas is the Luka revenge game, the Luka Bowl. Then home Houston is going to be a huge one, second to last game, final home game, and then at Portland. So like, I think 11-8 is possible. That's probably, I would say, more on the optimistic side for sure. But I think again, if Rui's not out much longer and DFS and Jaxson come back and it's just LeBron out for like 1 to 2 weeks, I think there's a path to them staying above 500. Obviously, if LeBron misses 3-4 weeks, Rui misses another week after the expected week. Jaxson, DFS missed this back-to-back, like could get closer to 500 or below. Biltoon, thank you for the super chat. Yo, Koloko just sitting on the bench when Luka needs a lob threat and we can't get a rebound is interesting. Can we ask JJ why? So you're the second person to bring this up. I'm sure actually more did in the chat, but second super chat. So it's probably worth asking JJ about. So I will do my best to bring it up. Ninth, thank you for the super chat. Convert Goodwin to regular contract, call up Stanley Johnson. Lakers could have used Stanley tonight, might need him for playoffs too. That's an interesting one, and that's one I've thought about in terms of potential moves like if we're not just assuming that Koloko or Jemison is going to be like the 15th guy or the second guy that they add. Maybe you test out Stanley Johnson. Like that would be the benefit. They do save money by not paying Goodwin, because remember, if they waive someone, if they waive Cam Reddish, you are still paying Cam, and now you're paying Goodwin more. So I think from a cost perspective, you could argue, obviously, that from a competitive perspective and just a doing what's best for the group, that's what they should do. I do think they are factoring in the money, and I think they're trying to keep Goodwin on as a two-way for as long as possible. So you could waive. But nah, because you would. I mean, you would have to waive one of the two-way guys or promote one of them to add Stanley. So, and Stanley. The one thing with Stanley that I actually forgot and recently remembered is that he can't be a two-way guy actually because of his tenure. This is, I believe, his 8th season. So I think he would have to be a 10-day guy. So you'd actually have to have a roster spot open for Stanley. So I think the way to do this would actually be waive Cam, have the open roster spot, test out Stanley with a 10-day, maybe give him a 10-day or 2, see what that looks like, and then decide on, are you converting him? Are you converting, or then maybe also waiving Len and converting Goodwin then, and like maybe you just add those two guys instead. But it's a little bit trickier because he actually can't be a two-way because of his years played. BLC, thank you for the super chat. We need this adversity to be a better team later. I certainly think like facing this and going through some of these trials and tribulations for the Lakers could be like iron sharpens iron. Adversity makes you, I think, a better team. And ideally you face the adversity and still win. And that's where tonight, like, I think there would have been plenty of adversity they faced. Had they still won, it would have been like an ugly win, but a win would have been a win. So you still got to find ways to win, ultimately. Hey, Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Can Goodwin and Trey both be on playoff roster? Yes. They would have to waive 2 players, and I think those 2 players would be Reddish and Len, but it is possible. Mitch Potter, thank you for the super chat. Stanley can't be on a 2-way, correct. 2-way, though, correct. 10-day. Yeah, he has to be on a 10-day. All right, I'm going to go 5 more minutes, and a real 5 minutes this time. Not a typical Jovan 5 minutes. Rolla, Jaxson plus DFS is sorely missed 100%. Mixelflix, DFS is a dog, but we got too many now looking to pass and not score, in parentheses, no spacing. That's where, I mean, I think DFS takes open shots. I think sometimes he'll look for the better shot and should just launch it. I think Rui has no problem. I think he has improved as a passer, but he has no problem launching at any time he's open. So that's where like Jaxson with the rim running, the rim pressure, the vertical lob threat, and Rui as a cutter, as a spot up guy, as a guy who can attack closeouts. Like those two in particular, I think are really missed. And then I do think DFS does all the little things. And for just talking offense, I think they can get by without him, but he's also been a close to 40% 3-point shooter. So I know he hasn't been shooting as well lately, but he's still a valuable piece. Braden, thank you for the super chat. I love how Luka took accountability. Hopefully Austin finds his shot soon. Thanks for all you do, Brate. We appreciate you. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the super chat. But yeah, I think Luka took accountability. Austin took accountability. I think, of course, at some point, like, especially when you're not playing as well, you want the accountability to be reflected in results. And I think that's the next step for the Lakers is like, can you apply this to Milwaukee, and can you go in there and because like I think the tenor of all this changes a lot if they just go in and beat Milwaukee, right? Like even if they lose the Denver game, I still would assume they probably would lose the Denver game. I think between the two, Milwaukee's a worse team. They are not playing as well as Denver is right now, and it's the front end of the back-to-back. So can you go in there, steal that game, and now all of a sudden it changes this trip. It changes. Like you got a really impressive win without LeBron. So I think that's the next thing for them, but certainly some positives from like the post game in terms of guys calling things out and being accountable. Drum Recovery Network, we need to make up that loss with an unexpected upset. That's what I was getting at with the Milwaukee game. Or it could be Denver. I mean, Denver would be the better one just from an actual like standings playoff perspective. But thank you for the super chat. Harry Chinani, this is a good one. Thank you for the super chat. How concerned are you about the offense? I am somewhat concerned. I think it's been interesting that I think the first like the initial reaction to the Luka trade, right, is okay, well they traded two of their 3 or 4 best defenders, 2 starters. They're going to be worse defensively, but their offensive ceiling goes to a different level. And we have seen some offensive ceiling moments from this group, but it has been, in my opinion, kind of like few and far between. And even looking at this stretch, so like they dropped 132 on Utah, they dropped 123 on Denver, they dropped 136 on New Orleans. Otherwise, every other game has been 113 points or fewer. And that game they scored 113 points was the overtime game against the Knicks. So like I've talked about it before, but like in the modern game, like teams kind of walk into 110 plus points a night if you are a good offense, if you are a contender. And I think the offense overall during this stretch, like, okay, Portland, you can kind of chalk that up. No Luka, second night of a back-to-back coming out of the All-Star break. But then Dallas is low scoring, Minnesota 111, both Clipper games 108 or less. The next game again goes to overtime, and then Boston 101, Brooklyn 108. So I just think like we haven't seen the offensive explosions and efficiency and effectiveness that I think we expected up to this point. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I still think there's untapped potential there, but I think Luka hasn't quite been himself, and I think part of it's been coming off the cap strain, new team, new system, new coaching staff. Also, then now this back injury, like because I feel like the middle portion, it was like the first few games, a little rusty, working himself back into game shape, conditioning. Then he started to look like himself. Then now he's dealt with this back thing and like still putting up big numbers, but I think not quite obviously been at the level he was at from say like Denver through like the New Orleans game. I think that the last few games he's put up the numbers, but it hasn't been quite what it was during that stretch. Then I also think JJ in the offensive organization and like I think I thought tonight you saw like you had the play where Dalton gets the back cut for a layup. You had the play where Dalton, it's like they enter the ball to Luka. I think he was on the left elbow. Then he hits Dalton with a backdoor for that monster dunk that he had. And just like, I mean, that was another thing too from earlier when I was talking about ways to attack the blitzing and stuff, is like you could just not have Luka bring the ball up and then leverage Luka as a post-up threat around the elbow, the little block, or on the wing. So I think there are different ways to kind of get into that. And I think their offense could use a little bit more creativity. And I think that the frustrating thing is like when they run the offense well and they are running sets and actions and the floor is spaced properly and the right guys have the ball and the right guys are cutting and whatnot. Like, I think that the results are pretty good and they look like one of the most unstoppable offenses in the league. And then they go through periods where it's iso ball or getting just high pick and roll. And then it just comes down to like, is Luka hitting shots? And then are they doubling him? And then how are they playing out of those doubles? So like, especially shorthanded without LeBron, I think there needs to be an extra layer of creativity offensively. And that has been a concern for this group going on. I mean, according to Craig, it's going on for a couple months. I would say certainly going on like post trade, that there's been an element of that in the beginning. It's like, okay, he's learning the playbook. It's this, it's that. Maybe they're adjusting to his play style a little bit, but I think they could certainly run a more organized offense and run stuff more than they have. All right. Mar says there's no team in the West that could beat a healthy Lakers in a 7-game series. I think OKC can. I think OKC and Denver can, but I also think the Lakers could beat them. So, can is the operative word here. L.A. says Austin needs to be at least getting to the line or he's a liability out there. I mean, I will point out he took 11 free throws tonight. So I think in that sense, that was another thing. He got to the free throw line more. He had the assists. Like, I mean, Luka and LeBron. Luka and Austin combined for 22 of the 31 assists tonight. Drum Recovery Network, thank you for the super chat. Who would have thought at the start of the season if we were without Hayes, we're screwed? Well, yeah, that. And also, I mean, part of that too is obviously trading AD because of the Luka stuff. But yeah, I mean, Hayes is a huge part for them. And thank you for the super chat. People are saying AR needs to lose the headband. Mars says, define a super team. I would define a super team as, I think it's overused. I would define it, especially in the I think it's had several definitions. I would say for like a modern, what I would consider a 2025 version of a super team, I think it's like 3 all-star level players on non-rookie deals. Like maybe one of them could be on a rookie deal, but at least 2 of them are making like real money, real max money. Cause like, that's where I would say like, I don't, you could argue that OKC is that with Shea, Chet, and J-Dub, but they're all, or 2 of the 3 are on rookie deals right now. So I think it's hard to be considered a super team when you're on a rookie deal. It's typically like LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love, Steph, KD, Clay, and Draymond, KD, Kyrie, Harden. Like I think there are some clear, and really I think if we're getting technical with it, I also think like the guys I should be in their prime and kind of justify the contract. Like that's where I think Phoenix kind of falls short, where Beal is clearly past his prime. He does not justify that contract. I don't think he's still an all-star level player. So They have two of those guys, but I don't think a dynamic duo, in my opinion, does not make a super team. I think a super team is like 3+ all-star level players who are all roughly around their prime and making like at least 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4, however many there are, all making like real money. Because again, it's much easier to have if you kind of just like, I don't want to say luck into it, but like if you just draft well and you hit on a couple guys who are ahead of schedule, it's like, that's not really a super team. And I mean, typically I think even an extra layer with this would be like, most of the time, one of those guys is either signed or traded, and they're not like an organic player, right? So Miami, LeBron and Bosh are signed. Cleveland, LeBron is coming back, re-signed. Kevin Love is traded for. Golden State, they actually had an organic super team, but KD signs. Brooklyn, all 3 of those guys, or 2 of those guys sign. Harden is traded for. So I think that there's multiple layers to it, but I do think in general it's overused, and I think there are a lot of cases where it doesn't quite match up with at least my definition of it. Harry Chinani, Jokic or Shea for MVP? You know this is going to be a tough one for me. Thank you for the super chat. I would say, I'll give you. I think Shea's going to win it. I think voter fatigue is a real thing, and I also think that there's always an element with MVP of like the new shiny thing, the guy who hasn't won it, especially if they've been close before, like Shea was last year. I think Shea is deserving. So this one's kind of to me like Jokic. I'll say this actually, the year that Embiid won, I had a vote and I voted for Jokic, and I think I was on the right side of history with that one, and I think he should have won it. And I think the Embiid MVP kind of aged poorly personally, but I don't think he had as clear of a team case as Shea does. Like Shea is like they're 11 games up in the loss column of anyone else in the West. They're having a historic season from a net rating perspective, and while I think he has a lot of talent and one of the best rosters in the league, like certainly all of his numbers are basically right there. Jokic is ahead of him in most advanced stats, but it's usually like Jokic 1, Shea 2. Shea's averaging 32 a game. He's putting up some of the best numbers we've seen from a shooting guard / point guard, whatever you want to consider him. Like you can compare those to really like in the modern era, or like let's say mid 90s on, the only guys who have really put up like these types of numbers are Jordan, Kobe, Wade, in terms of like that shooting guard type. So I get the Shea MVP hype. I would just argue or flip it then that like statistically, this is arguably Jokic's best season of his career. And it is kind of weird to have a 3-time MVP who has put up certain numbers in previous seasons, and he's outdoing them and averaging a career high in points per game and averaging a career high in 3-point percentage. And like, there's all these kind of crazy wild stats with Jokic, but right now he would be the first player in NBA history to be top 10 in points, top 10 in rebounds, top 10 in assists, top 10 in steals as a center who people say is a defensive liability, top 10 in field goal percentage, and top 10 in 3-point percentage. Like those are, no player has ever done that before. And like for it to be a 7-foot center, he's also averaging a triple double, which is a polarizing thing where some people like that because of the Russ situation. Some people don't, but like they're probably going to be the 2 seed. We'll see how big that gap is ultimately. But to me, and this is I have a bigger issue with this where I think LeBron didn't get as many MVPs as he should have gotten. I think Kobe didn't get as many MVPs as he should have gotten. Like, I think we do this thing with MVP where we will be like, this guy's the best player, but because of, we create a narrative around someone else. And it's like right now, if you poll an NBA locker room, 90+% of the people are going to say Jokic is the best player in the league. Or if you were asking them specifically Jokic versus Shea, who's better, who's tougher to game plan for, it's Jokic. So I think while, again, there's like the record and the team success and Shea losing last year and Jokic being a 3-time winner, I do think the bar gets raised for that. But it's like, if his team is the 2 seed and he's putting up career numbers and like multiple notable stats, and he has this like body of work of, again, like, I mean, there was a large stretch there where he was top 3 in points, rebounds, and assists. Like, that is taking the triple double thing to a different level. Like, for as good as Russ was with some of those, like, with some of his numbers, he was not in like the top 3 in rebounding. And part of that's like a size thing, a position thing. But like, for him to be doing that and arguably having his best season, I just think it's like, then maybe go back and take away one of the other MVPs and give him this one. But like, I mean, you can't do that. But I think we do this with LeBron. It was just like, okay, let's come up with a reason to give it to someone else. With Kobe, with like, Jokic has been the best player in the league since 2021. At worst, 2022. He's still the best player in the league. And I think it's going to be close, but I do think Shea is going to win. That's my rant. All right. I am going. All right, let's keep it PG in the chat right now. And I know it's PG, but like, it's all love. It's all love. But I'm going to wrap here. I am going to call it. I will be back tomorrow with a new episode of Buha's Block, so be on the lookout for that. But thank you all so much for watching and listening. Shout out to the late night gang a little bit earlier with this being an East Coast game. So I hope for most of you that made things a little bit easier, whether West Coast, East Coast, or around the world, wherever you are right now. But that will do it. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and appreciate you again for helping me get to 25K on YouTube. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Again, I'll be back tomorrow afternoon with a new episode of Buha's Block. I will talk to you then. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you all in the chat.